HGI Now, turning supply chain insights into action.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of HGI Now. I am your host, Edward Hertzman, and joining me is Munir Mashukala, chairman and founder of M5 Group, one of the top 10 largest sourcing companies globally. Munir, welcome to today's show.
Thank you. I want to remain top 10.
I have a lot I want to go over with you today, so let's get right into it. Given the increased costs in the system right now, continued uncertainty, and the value-focused consumer, what do you expect for Q4 quarterly reports? And then what are the dominoes that you think will fall from there?
I think there are a couple of things which we are going to see. One is that there is significant inventory holdback in China and India, and we'll come to that later on the effects of price increase. There's also been a 50% sharing of tariffs, predominantly by all exporters and intermediaries.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing we see. And we also see some market shifts. So I know that one of the three off-price had a very good beauty business. So what they're going to do is they're going to reduce their DI on apparel and footwear and rely on the local importers to deliver goods and increase their beauty, wellness, and supplement businesses. But when I say supplements, I think you understand what those things are, everything to do with beauty supplements.
Mm-hmm.
So we are already seeing those shifts taking place. There is going to be a price increase. And is that price increase going to come from IMU shifts, or that's going to come from just generally to meet the extra cost? I think the biggest elephant in the room, which we are looking at right now, is you have to start looking at Q4 reports when they come in, and which companies have significantly published what they have paid in duty. So we already know from public reports of G3, from Ross, from Under Armour, from Carter's, that they're reporting the direct numbers. So now if that number is going to multiply again in Q4, this is liquidity. That means these duties have been taken from their banking system straight. It's not like you start doing terms of 60 days, 90 days, or 100 days with CBP. They take the money within 30 days. So we are going to see some hemorrhaging. We are also seeing store closures, and that has started to happen. And those store closures, some have just announced, but if you just go into any AI tool and ask, you'll get a list of store closures, very specific. They're here. I don't want to read them out, but we already have significant store closures. So the good news is that there's FOB, or cost of goods stability, right now. So the cost of goods stability is helping the overall situation.
So Munir, we've had different people on the show talk about different price increase strategies. Maybe it's easier when you introduce a new product to the market, up the retail, right? Because the consumer doesn't have anything to comp against. When it's a core program that they're used to buying every single week or year or month, that's where they see a little bit more sensitivity. But you and I have had off-camera conversations around the math. And I want to just get back to that for a second, because you've done the math for me before. Let's just take apple to apple. Let's say on average, we see a 20% tariff across all countries. What kind of retail price increase does that translate into?
So first, apple to apple, just like make it very simple. If everything is the same and a retailer works or a brand works with 50% IMU, and they take the MFN or the duty and just add the differential of 20% and don't change anything, they're looking at a 17.09% or 17% increase on their retail with no sacrifice. Nobody makes any sacrifice. The consumer pays 17%. That's it. Now, what happens when you go to a 37.5% duty? That means 17.5% more, but 17.5% is what you look at it. But if it's 20 plus 17.5%, it's almost double, right? So then you're looking at about 32% price increase. And then you go to India, for example, which is currently under 50%. I think Brazil has been reversed. 50% price increase means you have to take a tariff, which means you have to take a 42% price increase. Now, at the same time, if a retailer says, you know what, I can't pass everything, and I am buying from the market, they can negotiate or whatever they need to do, but everything remains the same. If a retailer says, I don't work on 50% and I work on 40%, 45% IMU, the 17% goes down to 6.5%. So it really depends on where you are right now in the marketplace, what product you are, what is your IMU. If you're doing 60 already and your average was going to be 50, you've got enough room to play.
Right.
And then, of course, I know it's an HGI call, but if you're doing copper, aluminum, trash cans, then that's 100 and some percent. So you can do the math again.
Hey, I don't know if it's a sales push, but I was walking around Wynwood, in Florida a couple weeks ago. You walk into Cartier, hey sir, prices are going up 10%. You walk into Rolex, you better buy this today. Prices are going up 21.5%. So these are material increases going into the holiday season, and that kind of brings me to my next question. Like, you're naming some substantial numbers here. Like, are you concerned? Especially if you look at the macroeconomic headwinds, that this is going to depress demand even further?
Yes, it will. It will. It will. And I think the next thing which I am hearing about, because those goods have started coming into the stores as we speak, we see, actually, you had said it some time back, but I did not know that it will translate. And there was one vendor said something, and don't take it wrong. He says, we're not going to sell our children's toys to feed your to your discounts. So it's going to come out of the material. It's going to start showing in the product. And I think some goods which have started arriving right now into the stores, I hear that you can see maybe substandard fabric being substituted.
So look, I think I've always, people have always given me a hard time because I say I sympathize with the supply chain maybe more than I do with the retailer. Maybe it's my background, where I come from, the work I've done in South Asia with you and and others. But I feel that when you hear about tariff impacts, when you hear about all the macroeconomic headwinds, it's always the retailer or the wholesaler that's getting the ink in the magazines and the news, how they're struggling, and we don't really hear enough about the factories. We don't hear enough about the other part of the world that's every single day making these items for us. And I'm really concerned. We came into this trade war with working capital concerns already threatening the production base. We saw a lot of closures and a lot of pain during COVID. Finally, we got out of that. And now with everything happening over the last 6 months, how much consolidations, how much closures, how much pain do you anticipate at the factory level? And which factory levels, maybe which countries are in the best position?
So naturally, there are countries which are only attracting 10%. They were in duty-free countries. So Egypt could be benefiting right now, but the Egyptian market is taken over by Turkish traders because they needed that production. So you can't just move everything everywhere. So first of all, that's not going to happen. And it's a very easy example for us to say t-shirts or jeans, but that's not what 100% of the business is. So yes, there is factory hemorrhaging going on. Of course, India is definitely on top of the list with the 50% to this. There's no way you can mitigate that kind of number. So and there's no news as yet that 50% needs to go. But so 20, I think very earlier on, we had a great speaker. He said 20 is going to be the new norm. So 20 is the calculation. Now, also, it depends on your mix, on your production mix. And I'll give you an analogy on both sides. So if you take Nike, it has substantial business outside the United States. If you take Under Armour, it does not have the same mix as Nike has. So the weighted average of any problem on Nike is going to be different than to Under Armour. So similarly, if it's factory A, call it Pacific or Eastern or whatever, if they have 100% United States production, then they're in trouble, whichever country they are in. And if they have 50, 60, 70, 80% diversity, then they're not that much in trouble. But however, what's happening also is that people are coming and getting great deals. So if I am 100 or 90 or 80% US based factory, I will give good deals to some of the bigger Japanese, European, Mexican retailers because they'll say, wow, you know what? I don't have to like give 25% off. I've heard factories in India who are now giving a discount of 25% on FOB. They didn't have that kind of margin.
Mhm.
So it's going from a mode of filling capacity from the inventory they had, the goods in process. Once that's cleared up, whatever is being negotiated now is the problem. So the factory hemorrhaging is going to start from today, and we'll see if things don't change in the next 3 to 4 months. And that will be an important time to see the ground reality of how many. The demand is depressed. Europe's depressed right now, even in demand. So it's having an effect
That's what
on the
concerns
factory.
me. This is not just a USA problem. You have a global uh, weakening of demand. And I think, look, this is a pure speculation what I'm about to say, but I've spoken to enough people. I really believe, I don't know if it's 5, 10, 15, 20%, there has been and will continue to be more factory closures. Probably the grade C factories, a lot of the price sensitive CM guys, but there is factory closures. And I'm also concerned, to double down on your point, your colleagues and I met with one of those top 10 largest supply chain companies, which you fall into that group. They have a huge India business. They own a lot of factories there. And they said to us, they are giving prices with the anticipation that Trump's going to roll this back before they have to deliver. So the 50 becomes 20. And then they're going to say, hey, I'm okay. But God forbid it doesn't roll back. To your point, they're underwater on those orders and they're done. They can't sustain it. Everyone's ideas are we're going to find other brands, we're going to find other countries. But you and I know that takes more than a month or two to actually get that into the work. So this is very scary.
It is, and there are also product classifications. So I had
Yeah.
a retailer coming to me, which is a very India-centric product, saying, can you produce it in Turkey or Morocco? No, I can't produce it in Turkey or Morocco because you can't make this product there. You know, the only other country which can make it is probably Italy, and it would be about 300% more than what you paid. So there are products which you just cannot move around and in such short notice.
I think
Even a
for the
season is short notice.
I think for the listeners, there's something to really take away from this, is that without a good supply chain, you don't have a business. And you could continue to beat up these guys. You could continue to say, hold the fabric. Oh, I'll take it now, but I need a discount. But you told me to make it 90 days ago. You could continue to ask for aggressive payment terms. But if you're contributing to their demise, which is ultimately your own demise. And if you don't think of it like that, it's never been more important to have a solid supply chain. If COVID taught us one thing, it's that. And I think you see bad actors are coming back into play, and you see bad behavior creeping up again, which is concerning.
There's also domestic default because, first of all, I think yarn is, if I'm not mistaken, is probably in at 5-year low right now,
Yep.
which means automatically, you have spinners going to have default on their working capital. It is already happening in many, many big exporting countries. And when the things like that happen, that's a different kind of domino effect. I mean, from here back there. So, but that's a silver lining right now, that at least the raw material prices are low.
It's a silver lining for, to your point, maybe the buyers, and maybe for the U.S. customer, because that's one less thing that's going to increase the price. But we have had farmers, we've had cotton and Supima and in these conversations, and I'll tell you, for every bale they sell, they lose more money.
Yes.
And there's only so much for so long. Now, do they start planting other crops? Do they move, which in time will then decrease the capacity, increase price? Unfortunately, right now in America, farming is not a boom business, right? And so it's not like they move to soybeans or they move to potatoes. They're making that much more money. So for the time being, a lot of them are staying in cotton. But this is not a sustainable business for them either. So we could have a whole conversation on that, but maybe good for price today, but not good for the future of farmers in America or globally. Let's go to another topic that I know you've been very vocal on. I think that I've also personally been very passionate about this next topic. No matter how much we beat the drum here, I feel like no one's getting it. And that's under invoicing and some hanky-panky practices. The current administration is not just focused, Munir, on imposing tariffs. They're very serious about collecting it. If there's one thing we know about Trump's administration, they're not in the give money away phase right now. They're in the collection phase. And this means it's time for the industry to get serious about cleaning up trade fraud. And from your perspective, what will it take to eliminate under invoicing and other practices like this? We've talked about DDP, foreign brokers, all these games that everyone's playing, but I don't think it's resonating with anybody.
Well, keeping politics aside, just the delay which happened in the last 6 years on the de minimis, and there were $68 billion worth of goods which came in duty free or de minimis free, however you want to do it. Over 90% of counterfeit goods came under this category. So there were ways. But it took, it was there forever, but some of the Chinese D2C got onto it, found the loophole. And this is the kind of number which came in every category. And now that we have the False Claim Act and the Trade Fraud Task Force, I do feel, and also please let's not forget, a lot of our listeners, especially overseas, do not understand. We're also going through something called a furlough period. So you've got less people working currently. So there's a lot of automated duty tax collection going on. But other than that, we have 40 days plus into no pay right now. So I think let this whole thing settle down. I feel somewhere around January, potentially the third party, or what's called the custom broker mechanism, will be questioned and clamped down, and the shell company will be addressed. I don't think it's going to go because it's hurting too many people.
Yeah.
The big difference between before and now, when the duties were 16 and 34%, which are still 16 and 34, and there was no tariff, the alleged under-invoicing was being done to profit oneself. It was not to get more business from a retailer. It was to increase your own margin, and it also became a small business for a lot of these traders coming from foreign countries, opening small shop here and making a few pennies at the cost of the United States exchequer or the customs duty. Now, this is being done to actually mitigate cost, to keep their shops running. And retailers are not giving the upcharge. So there's a shift. So the shift is going to be different. Before, it was being done just to profit oneself. Now it's become part of the system. So it's hurting everybody. And the list of people who are paying duties right now on the direct imports, you're going to have legitimate companies out of business and illegitimate companies in business. That can't continue.
No, it can. And we have reason to believe I don't think it's been publicized yet, but from our intel in DC, we believe they're going to eliminate one's ability to use a foreign broker. As a domestic company, how is the person importing the goods into this country not an American company, an American citizen, whatever it is? That's going to shake it up a lot. And I think that there's going to be a scramble for people to either set up shop here, legitimize their supply chain. But I think that the thing to note here, Munir, is people think just because they're using a foreign broker, they've isolated themselves from liability. And that is the thing that I keep saying. You are still liable. If you're an employee, you're liable. If your company is doing it and your employee is doing it, you as the owner is liable. If you're an employee doing it on behalf of the boss, you're liable. There's a lot of liability in this system. And a lot
there
of
is a form called 7501, if I'm not mistaken. Any retailer, importer, wholesaler, brand owner can ask for that form. And if they ask for that form from the people who are supplying them, they'll be shocked the price written on it. It's not impossible to have that FOB price. Just the fact that you're not asking for it, it does not absolve you.
Correct. And look, if it's too good to be true, look, you used the line the other day. What was that line you said?
It's too good to be true pricing.
Look, you can't take $1, add 40% tariffs and tell me it's still $1. To your point, I know you're working sharper, factories are working sharper, retailers are working sharper. So maybe $1 becomes $1.18, $1.22, but the 40% doesn't evaporate. And everyone knows this. So Munir, I want to finish up with a question on sustainability and circularity. One of your holdings in the M5 portfolio is Cyclo. You're one of the largest, probably if not largest, recycled cotton provider out of Bangladesh right now. For years, we've talked about the increased demand for recycled fibers. We've seen the increase in ESG. Um, However, I'm slightly concerned right now with so much emphasis on rule of origin, where the fiber's coming from, where the scraps are coming from. The administration has, with the Uyghur Forced Protection Act, making it necessary for you to be able to substantiate the fiber origin. Has this impacted your business, businesses like you? And has that resulted in a decreased demand from not only the retailers, but maybe also the consumers?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. I think I always get the abbreviation wrong. Was it the ULFPA or the Uyghur,
Forced
the
Protection
Xinjiang
Act, yeah.
Partners? Yeah, I think that was again introduced at a time where the efficacy or the problem vis-a-vis circularity was not considered, and I know one of our competitors has suffered because of that, because it's just a fiber supplier. Now the issue is that naturally, if you're going to use recycled fiber out of China, which was still very recently your largest exporter of goods anyway, and if there is circularity used, so it's difficult for them to prove that Xinjiang cotton was not being used. But again, if you're getting it from Vietnam or Turkey, and from Bangladesh, the portion of Chinese raw cotton would be almost you know a few percent. So that you start saying that's not fair on the origin part. It's not the same in EU or any other country except the United States. And while what's happened right now is that instead of saying that you're using RG, it's just being used as a low cost raw material, and not talking about you know that this is recycled or where it is. And then you can of course give a traceability certificate saying that this does not have this Xinjiang cotton. So this, I think, is counterproductive, and it probably need a very left uh, socialist legislators to say that, you know what, we need this green initiative, and any recycled material should be exempted from the country of origin fiber violation. So the the good news is that because of the cost, recycled fibers are completely in business right now. But the whole spirit of a consumer to be aware that they are wearing something which is, it's, let's say, materials for good, using it's not being, so that's why ESG and these claims have gone down, and branded circularity products are suffering, because all the branding they've done and all the investment they've done and all the compliance they've done is not being helpful, because people are just using recycled products right now as a cost substitution.
Munir, as always, you're a wealth of information, and you also do it in an enjoyable and conversational way, which we turn this sometimes dry topic matter into, I guess, as entertaining as it can be, right? So thank you again. Let's stay in touch. I feel like you don't know what we're going to wake up tomorrow. Another tweet, another news article, and we're back to the drawing board. So as always, thank you, and to all our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of HGI Now.